How's it going, everyone? It's Caleb Lumley here, and today we're going to be doing something different. Today we're going to be reviewing a console. We're going to be talking about the Retron 5. I've had this system for a while now. I've had it for over a year. I've had plenty of time to game with it, see what it's all about, and today we're going to talk about it. So the Retron 5, first of all, is amazing because it does something that no other console can do. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. Technically, there's 5 different systems that work up top. And then it has 3 more systems it can play up front. So this system, let's take that out of there. That's the controller holder back here. So this system, it has the Genesis slot there. It has a Super Nintendo slot, which also plays the Super Famicom games. It has the NES slot, and it has a Famicom slot. And then on the front here, you have a Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance slot on the front. So this can play a ridiculous amount of games. And honestly, if you are wanting just a great way to play a lot of video games and you want to play them in HD, this is a great way to do it, especially if you're wanting to play those Game Boy Advance games on your TV. The fact that you can play Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance games on the TV using this thing is great. Now, I will say, it's not perfect. There's some issues with this system. There's some compatibility issues that I've noticed, mainly with Game Boy Advance games. I haven't really had many issues with other games, but there's some issues with it, and we'll talk about that. But first of all, let me just say that if you're wanting to play NES games, it works fine for that. NES games go right here. Now, one thing I will say is I'm not going to push this too hard down, but usually whenever you are trying to take a game out of here, it can be rather difficult. The game does have a habit of, the console has a habit of just hanging on to the game really hard. So that is something to keep in mind whenever you are playing this and you're putting in your games and stuff. It likes to hold on to your games. So, for example, here's a Gundam for the Famicom. And trying to take this out, it grips onto them tight. So keep that in mind. You know, it doesn't feel great when you're removing games. The build quality, it's light. It doesn't feel like super high quality. It's not the worst feeling thing in the world, don't get me wrong. But, you know, this is about $150 is how much these go for. So the fact that they were able to get this many systems working for that price, they're going to have to take some shortcuts and they're going to have to do some things. So, you know, that's probably why you have some of these things that aren't perfect, like, you know, holding on to cartridges really hard and stuff like that. Now, one thing I do like about the system is that it actually does work with some of my ROM hacks. Not all of them, but some of them. For example, here's Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokéduel. This is a Game Boy Advance game. It is a mod of Pokemon Fire Red, and this works actually almost just fine on this. The only issue it has is it doesn't really like to save the game very well, but you can actually still get around that because this uses save states. You can use save states, and if you use save states, it works just fine. So that's still actually really cool. So that works on it, and things like my Genesis, I have a lot of Genesis ROM hacks. This is Sonic.exe. This works great on it. Had no issues with that. Now, again, it's not perfect. It's not going to be compatible for every single one. And to be fair, it doesn't ever guarantee that it's going to work with homebrews or ROM hacks or anything like that. For example, here's this one. This is Super Junkoid. This one does not work on the Retron 5. It just doesn't. I don't know why. It just doesn't even recognize it. However, something else, another ROM hack like Equestria Bound, works just fine on it. So it's kind of hit or miss with that stuff. Even with the regular games, I've had some compatibility issues with the Game Boy Advance games. This game works just fine. This is Racing Gears. And it works great on this Retron. But I've had games like Danny Phantom, Urban Jungle on this, and the game will just like phase out. It will turn into a bunch of different colors, and you can't see what's going on the screen. It will basically just turn into colorful static. So that happens. And then I've had some games where it just doesn't even load all the way. I have Lego Drome Racers, and that one just won't load all the way. I've tried some different types of ROM hacks. For example, I have a English translation of Silent Hill, the visual novel version of Silent Hill, and it can't get past the first cinematic scene on that. So here's a ROM hack I actually cannot get to work on the Retron 5. This is Silent Hill Play Novel, and basically what this does, it puts the Silent Hill visual novel into English. So this is a Japanese only release, but this is a ROM hack that puts it in English. It's an English translation. And as you can see, like, it starts off okay. It starts off the beginning all right. All that stuff runs okay. But then once you get to the main menu and you actually press the start button. Let's see what it does. This is usually where it breaks. Okay, here's usually where it stops. You can see it's kind of doing this like loading in of the light, and it usually gets stuck here and it doesn't continue. Yeah, see, now it's just looping. So it can't get past this screen. So it's not perfect, but if you're just wanting to play a lot of your, heavier titles, your bigger titles that are more well known, then you're not really going to have any issues with this. It runs those just fine. Let me show you the controllers that you get with this specific model. Now, this is the Hyper Beach model. This is a really nice just blue and pink model. I really like the colors of this. So the first controller you get is the one that everyone hates. So this is this Hyper control, this brick. And here's the thing. I actually like one thing about it. I like how it has those like switches in it. I think that's nice. I will say it doesn't feel very high quality. The buttons, they're not awful, I will say. I like this controller more than most people do, but I understand why people don't like it. Shoulder buttons are pretty much non-existent. Like, they're there, but they're like super flat. Yeah. So I understand why people don't like this. However, the good thing about picking up this system is that you do get another controller. You don't have to use this controller even though it has the home button. You can use a regular NES controller, Genesis controller, Super Nintendo controller. It has ports for all of those on the side, and it has 2 sets of ports, so you can obviously play 2-player. But it also comes with this controller, and this one is a lot better. This one is the Hyperkin Scout. It's a lot more like the Super Nintendo controller, and if you are wanting to go to the home menu at any point during the game, all you have to do is press the down button on the D-pad and the start button at the same time, and the home button will open. And that works for any controller, so you can use any controller you want and still have full function of this system. And whenever you go into the main menus, that's when you're going to see your stuff like save states and all the extra little bonus features that you have on this system. Now, the nice thing about this, other than just the fact that you have the save states and everything, is that it actually does have a place on the back. And I don't really use this, but I know some people do, where you can put the SD card in, and that will actually let you use some different like English translations and stuff like that. So if you have some Japanese games and you want to put English translation on here, you can do that. So that's actually really cool. And the way that this system works is that even though it is taking cartridges, you're taking your cartridge, you're putting it in there, what it's doing is it's taking the game and it's reading the game. It's reading the game and it's emulating it. So that is basically how this works. It's basically an emulation machine.
Round one, fight!
It takes the game, sees you have the game, it, from what I understand, basically rips the game, and then you're able to play it through emulation. Now, it's not like it doesn't stay on the system. The game doesn't stay on the system, so you do have to put the cartridge back in every time. But that is basically how I understand how it works. So that's how the gaming works on this one. And as you can see, it gives me a little bit of a fight taking those games out, and that's the biggest flaw with this thing. We'll talk more about these controllers in different videos. I'd like to do a separate video for each controller. I'd like to just do a bunch of different controller reviews for a bunch of different types of controllers. So I will go into more depth, but keep in mind, I do think that this controller is great, and this controller, if you don't like it, this is a great substitute. So I'm glad that they started putting this in the box with the Retron 5s. I'm going to show you how the save states work. I'm going to show you how the games load up. I'm going to show you that stuff, and we're going to get into it. And I'll try to show you some of the extra features as well. All right, everybody. So here's the main menu of the Retron. This is what it looks like just when you have no cartridge in there. You have a few different settings here. You have the actual settings menu here where you can apply image filters. You can apply scan lines if you want. Aspect ratio, you can mess with that. And just a bunch of different screen settings. And you can tune it pretty well to how you like. You have button mapping there. So let's start off with Game Boy games, because I think Game Boy games are the most interesting thing to play on the system. We're going to start off with the Game Boy Advance game. Let's plug this in and see what it looks like. Now, one thing about Game Boy Advance games, I will say, is that sometimes it's a little picky about it, so you may have to unplug the cartridge and then plug it in again, and it may take a couple tries to actually get it. It's kind of picky about that every now and then. And as you can see, now the game is loading. Racing Gears Advanced. It actually saves your spot sometimes. It doesn't always do this, but sometimes it does. So you can see it actually saved where I was in the game there. And the nice thing about these games too, and you can do this with any of the systems, is that if I'm in the middle of a race right here, so if I go forward, and let's just say I want to stop here, I can bring up this menu, and I can select a save state slot. So if I go through any of these save state slots, I'll just go to save state 9, save it, and then it saved my snapshot. So if I'm going around a corner, if I get stuck behind people and I can't catch up, all I have to do is press that down button again, go to load, and it will put me right back where I was. And that's great for saving your progress on games that actually don't have save functions. And it's also great for games where you're about to go into like a boss fight or something, and you want to save before you go into a boss fight. This is a great function. I'm really happy with the save states. I think that it works really great, because there's a lot of retro games that are kind of hard to get into because they require you to restart, like if you lose your life and stuff. So that really helps you get into those games that are a little bit harder to get into because of that. So as you can see, the Retron 5 runs games fantastically well. Every now and then, like I said, usually with Game Boy Advance games, you have some compatibility issues. With some ROM hacks, you may not be able to play them. But for the most part, the games work great. I mean, here's another ROM hack I'm playing on the screen, the Sonic.exe game. It's amazing that this system is able to play so many different games, and when you consider how many different systems that you're able to play, the price tag is completely justified. $150 is frankly a steal to be able to play this many different systems. So I absolutely love this thing. It may not be perfect. It definitely has flaws with its build quality. The way it grabs onto cartridges is sometimes ridiculous. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts to load the games. But for the most part, it does what it says it's going to do. It plays a lot of these games. It plays them well, and it puts them in HD, and it's just super convenient too, because now, you don't have to have a bunch of different consoles hooked up either. You can just have your one Retron 5, and you have your Super Nintendo, you have your NES, you have your Sega Genesis, you have your Game Boy, you have your Game Boy Advance, you have your Game Boy Color, you have all of these systems in one instead of having a bunch of different systems set up. So overall, I think that the Retron 5 is honestly a steal. I think it's a fantastic system. I know that some people have had issues with it, but honestly, I have not had any actual major issues with my Retron 5. It's held up for over a year now. I use it a lot. I use it especially for pretty much every Game Boy review that you see on the channel. That's how I capture my footage for them. It just captures all of those fantastically well. So I think that the Retron 5 is 100% worth picking up, and I'm glad that I have it in my collection. And I think that if you are looking for a convenient way to play a lot of these games and you don't have a Retron 5, or maybe you're looking into getting into a bunch of these retro games, maybe you're wanting to get into retro gaming, this is a great way to get into retro gaming because you are able to start collecting for a bunch of systems all at once by just picking up a single system. So go check out the Retron 5. It's awesome. I love it. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.